Just as a tree is known by the fruit it bears, so is a man by what he does. He will be the friend of all creatures, for he resolves not to hurt or kill any of them, not even the humble bee nor the lowly ant. Please continue watching for the spiritual and karmic aspects of the vegetarian diet by Sant Kirpal Singh and Baba Sawan Singh, Vegetarians, Part 2 of 2.
Baba Sawan Singh Ji was an Indian saint and enlightened master. Born in 1858, he was a bright and virtuous youth whose studies in engineering led him to be a successful sub-divisional officer in the government. From an early age, Sardar Sawan Singh Ji pored over the scriptures of various religions, met pilgrims, and constantly yearned for God. A holy Sufi ascetic named Baba Kahan predicted that a master would find him to give him initiation. Indeed, the venerated Baba Jaimal Singh Ji, also known as Baba Ji Maharaj, came to find his new disciple, Sardar Sawan Singh Ji, eventually became Baba Ji's successor and the second Satguru of Radha Swami Satsang Beas from 1903 until 1948. While promoting brotherhood and equality in a turbulent society through his many loving actions, Baba Sawan Singh Ji spiritually awakened many people through imparting the practice of Surat Shabd Yoga. Today, he is still loved and venerated as the Great Master. Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj was a disciple of the well-known master of Beas, Hazur Maharaj Sawan Singh Ji. They met in 1924 in the ashram of Baba Sawan Singh Ji on the banks of the Beas River. The master, Kirpal Singh Ji, recognized the luminous form he had seen during the 7 previous years in his meditation. Hazur Maharaj Sawan Singh Ji initiated him into the spiritual discipline of Surat Shabd Yoga, and from then on, Kirpal Singh Ji dedicated his life to reaching the summits of spirituality. We will now continue with the reading from Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj and his beloved master Baba Sawan Singh Ji's book entitled The Spiritual and Karmic Aspects of the Vegetarian Diet. In this part, we will learn about the essential principles which every human should follow to experience life and being loved by God as the Creator intended. The spiritual aspect of the vegetarian diet. We have all been created by God. All of us are embodied souls. Soul is of the same essence as that of God, and God is in all of us, and we should therefore love one another. That is what Saint Paul taught all his life. It is written in the Quran, O human beings, do good. Be good to your parents, relatives, orphans, the needy and the poor, your neighbors and your fellow beings. Such a life pleases Allah. Allah is within each one of us. The haughty who is selfish is not cared for by God. A master saint always enjoins love and reverence for all creation from the highest to the lowest. observance of non-violence even in the depths of the heart, truthfulness, non-injury to one's feelings by thoughts, words, symbols and deeds, kindly treatment towards all, cheery temperament, faith in the innate goodness in man, avoidance from giving bad names to others, non-indulgence in slanderous and amorous talk and idle pursuits. Avoid accusations, for they boomerang with greater intensity. If one is keen for God realization, then one must not hurt anyone's feeling, for heart is the seat of God. Have you ever realized that a mango seed, when embedded, gathers all the sweetness from the soil, while a pepper seeds drag all the bitterness in it? As a man thinks, so he becomes. Nothing is good or bad in the world, but our thinking makes it so. We, like the one or the other of the seeds, draw upon impulses from the atmosphere as suits our own mental makeup. We have in Mahabharata, the great epic poem of ancient India, that outer signs of a chaste and a clean life are good deeds. Just as a tree is known by the fruit it bears, so is a man by what he does. This is a great teaching of a great value. It helps the man to flourish and receive a good name both here and hereafter. He will be the friend of all creatures, for he resolves not to hurt or kill any of them, not even the humble bee nor the lowly ant. Such a person will surely know the truth one day. Prince Dhritarashtra, the son of Kuru, the mighty king of Bharat, once hurled a rebuke on Gandhiva, the mighty bow of Arjun, the Pandav prince. Arjun got angry and, touched to the quick, put his arrow on the Gandiv. Lord Krishna, who happened to be near at hand, asked Arjun what he was doing. Arjun replied that he, as a Kshatriya prince, had taken a vow that if anyone would but say a word against my mighty bow, I would not spare him. Lord Krishna said, O Arjun, could you tell me the fruit of dharma or righteousness? Is it pain or pleasure? Arjun replied that dharma or righteousness consisted only in the resultant love and harmony. So, one must first think of the result before doing or even contemplating any deed. It will certainly prolong one's span of life. A person with a virtuous life will never entertain any evil idea against any person and will never lose his temper and get excited. Such a one gets longevity in life. The life process is calculated by means of breaths. Normally, breathing is going on very rhythmically, some 10 to 12 per minute. But when a person is in a paroxysm of rage and is excited, he takes 20 to 23 breaths in a minute. Thus, there is a veritable truth hidden in the saying that good deeds or virtues prolong life, while evil deeds or vices shorten the span of one's life. Remember, you may even do meritorious deeds, but if you do not live a good moral life, you are nowhere. Try to live by the precept of the Master, and then alone your words can have weight with your friends. You cannot preach of chastity with lust in your heart and a leer in your eyes. You cannot dupe people for any length of time. Sooner or later, the cat will be out of the bag. The public cannot trust you blindly for long and take you at your face value. Excuse me, if I were to question as to why societies and preachers very often get a bad name, it is because they do not live by the teachings they preach to others. A godly person is possessed with a right mind and a right heart. He has both within and without a perfect spring of peace. His dealings are fair, open, and unquestionable. Truth springs from the very bottom of his heart. The audience is spellbound and gets a feeling of comfort by hearing him, as his utterances are drenched from the cooling effect of the loving and chaste thoughts within him, and everyone feels satisfied. A one among many, he stands as a tower of strength because of the purity of his heart. Lord Tennyson, a great poet, speaking of Sir Galahad, one of the knights of the Round Table, puts in his mouth the words, "My strength is like the strength of 10, because my heart is pure." It is said that out of the abundance of heart a man speaks. On the other hand, if a person is selfish and mischievous, he cuts with his own axe the tree of his life on which he sits with complacency. People dread to see his face and consider him an ominous being. If such a person goes anywhere, people shun him outright, even from a distance, and consider him an unlucky anathema. A righteous person, on the other hand, has his eyes on his weaknesses and through self-introspection weeds them out one by one. Swami Shiv Dayal Singh Ji advises that one should pick up his failures one by one and cast them out. All other saints have said this thing in the same strain. Love thy neighbor as thyself, do unto others as you would wish them to do unto you. The whole of the religious philosophy hangs by these two cardinal principles. If one puts before him these two golden rules, his life will surely be transformed. The person who has no element of sympathy in his heart and a human touch is not fit to be called even a man, and he cannot know God. He who treats his enemies lovingly will disarm them in no time. In so far as you can, try to do no injury to anyone. Be good to all, and you will be at peace with yourself and be a radiating center of loving grace around you. The prayers of others to whom you may have done good will help you. The good thoughts of others will swarm around you with a benediction. The very idea of doing good will first affect you and will draw all good vibrations from the surrounding atmosphere. In a nutshell, we have just laid a Panchshila or 5 fundamental truths on which we can build the wonderful mansion of spirituality. These are non-violence in thought, word and deed, truthfulness, chastity, love for all and hatred for none, irrespective of position, wealth or learning, selfless service, physical and financial, and a willing share in the joys and sorrows of others. The living master cuts asunder the Gordian knot of an initiate. The disciple of the master refrains from sins. Those who will follow the above will enrich their lives here and hereafter. They will control their mind and outgoing faculties by coming in contact with the living word of God through the living master saint. Loving viewers, we appreciate your company for today's words of wisdom entitled The Spiritual and Karmic Aspects of the Vegetarian Diet by Sant Kirpal Singh and Baba Sawan Singh, Vegetarian Part 2 of 2.